So have you announced to our listeners that you are getting a new 7,000 square foot house?
No, I'm not getting a 7,000 square foot house. I wish.
Dude.
That'd be awesome.
The Tom is going to have one of the biggest houses in Travis County. Like one of the biggest houses. It will definitely be the biggest house in the small town in Texas that he'll now be from.
No, dude.
Dude, I really hope you run for mayor of that small town. AJ and I will block walk for you.
I mean, it wouldn't be hard. It would just be like a few blocks, like 2 or 3.
Yeah. Why do you think I offered to block walk for you, dude? Is AJ still there? Did AJ leave?
What's up? So what's going on with Uber in London? All right, I'm on the transportationforlondon.gov.uk website, and what I'm trying to find is there like a text of the ruling on the Uber thing?
That's the thing. I think they literally just said Uber is not whatever the legal standard is, like fit and qualified or something like that.
Fit and proper.
Fit and proper. I think that's it.
Fit and proper is a benchmark that Britain applies across different industries and its charitable organizations to ensure that people or organizations meet the requirements of their industry or specialty. So it's not a made-up thing.
No, by made up, I'm talking about it's completely arbitrary.
So, okay, here's what the TfL press release says. I don't know if there's a written order that's available, but here's what the press release says. Transportation for London, which is basically the City of London's Department of Transportation. So TfL has on Friday the 22nd September informed Uber London that it will not be issued with a private hire license after expiry of its current license on 30th of September. TfL has concluded that Uber London Limited is not fit and proper. This is in relation to a number of issues which have potential public safety and security implications. These include its approach to reporting serious criminal offenses, its approach to how medical certificates are obtained, its approach to how enhanced disclosure and barring service checks are obtained, its approach to explaining the use of grayball in London, which is software that could be used to block regulatory bodies from gaining full access to the app and prevent officials from undertaking regulatory or law enforcement duties. These sound like genuine. This is not just some like made up stuff. So I understand that like most legal standards, even the like so-called objective ones, are fairly arbitrary. But I don't know that fit and proper is any more arbitrary than any other legal standard that is used in common law countries. I mean, these seem like
maybe that's my no. So I mean, when its approach to X, its approach to Y, it's like this isn't like. It's not a specific set of allegations. Like anything could be, I could just say, listen, I don't like your approach to X. I'm going to prevent you from doing business. You know what I mean?
Ruch, they have an entire handbook on fitness and propriety.
Of taxi services?
No, this isn't just for taxi. So this is apparently
I think that's kind of my point. It's a totally generally applicable thing, and they can take away they can find at any time that so-and-so is not fit and proper. And they can basically just include a paragraph on things that you're doing as opposed to like specific offenses. Do you know what I mean?
Isn't that true of all laws?
No, they actually no.
No,
laws
yeah. Hold on there. So like there are a set of laws that applies even in Texas to all corporations. If a corporation doesn't follow those laws, and regardless of what that corporation is in the business of, then they are they could face.
But there are specific allegations.
Yeah, and so like, how is this different? They have an entire handbook of it. Look at the show notes and look at the handbook.
Tom, it's like saying listen, I've decided.
No, hold on, hold on,
Ruch,
you're saying a lot of stuff without actually like reading or even looking at this handbook, right? Like this isn't just like.
Let me talk you through it. I can talk you through what I'm talking about.
Have you read the handbook yet? Have you looked at the handbook? Have you looked at the table? Have you looked at the table of contents of the handbook even?
Hold on a second. Let me just say what I'm saying, and then you can say what you're saying, okay? Imagine a situation in which the State Bar of Texas came to you and said, listen, we don't think that the way in which you are practicing law is reasonable. Then they refused to define what it was that you were doing was unreasonable. Like, wouldn't you agree that that would be arbitrary? That if they're going to make allegations and suspend your license, they need to make specific allegations. They can't just generally say, we just don't like the way you're practicing law. We don't think it's reasonable. Or how about they said this? We don't think, Tom, you're meeting your duty to your clients.
Let me ask you this. Do you think a standard such as whether the person has been the subject of any judgment or debt or award in the United Kingdom or elsewhere that remains outstanding or was not satisfied within a reasonable period is a vague and general standard?
But that's not what they're saying. They're actually not saying that.
Like, my point is that these are the specific standards, and you wouldn't know them if you like what the example that you
but
gave
even
has
that
no
standard.
the example that you gave has no applicability to the Uber situation because that's not what's happening.
But read their press release. They haven't made specific allegations. Like, these include its approach to reporting serious criminal offenses. Like, if you're going to suspend somebody's license, you make specific allegations. Do you not? Like, is that that's so controversial? I mean,
hold on.
Hold on, Ruch. Would you agree that the grayball software is a specific allegation? Like, that is a specific thing that Uber did that we all agree is bad?
Hold on one second. Let me look at what they actually said. It's approach to explaining the use of grayball in London.
Right.
Make an allegation.
So first of all, you're reading a press release, right, which is dumbed down.
Yeah.
This isn't the text of the actual order. Right.
No further comment will be made by TfL pending any appeal of this decision. No further comment.
Right. So there's a whole litigation process that is available to Uber where TfL will have to prove up the decision. So first of all, you're not reading the text of an actual legal decision. You're reading a press release, which is dumbed down for the general public. But second of all, the use of the grayball software is an extremely specific episode, right? It is like a specific fact intensive episode. That
it would be if they made those allegations. I agree.
Do they have to make all of their allegations in every press release?
No, I'm just saying that at least I can't seem to find an actual decision.
Yeah, I don't think there's a text of an order that's available.
So, in any event, I mean, listen, my only comment on this was not whether they should have done what they did. It's merely that I believe that any time a regulatory body acts like this, where they take away someone's license to do business or license to practice their profession or whatever else, they should provide specific allegations of wrongdoing.
So are you familiar with the grayball software?
Yeah, no, I am.
So, okay, for everyone who's listening, Uber basically flagged the accounts of people who were regulators in different jurisdictions. And when they would show on the Uber app installed on these people's phones, basically have like phantom cars or fewer cars than were available or whatever. And the whole idea was that if Uber was doing something shady, then regulators wouldn't be able to see in their own apps what was going on, and it would make it harder for regulators to hail rides and things like that. And the purpose was for Uber to be secretive about its operations, away from the oversight of regulators, right? I think that behavior on its own, just saying like the grayball software exists and Uber did that, I think that is a specific enough allegation for a fitness and propriety finding. Right, like I actually think that the things that they talk about in this press release, which is again like not a petition, not an order, it is a press release that is dumbed down for the public. I think the allegations that are in the press release are sufficient to say that Uber should lose its license.
Yeah, I guess I just disagree. I mean, maybe if we can find, I actually don't think there is a specific order. So that's, at least I haven't seen one, and I've looked. So also, Tom, the guide that you linked to was not actually, it was a financial regulatory guide. I don't even think it was the right guide.
No, it's the right guide, dude. In the show notes.
Yeah, that's what I clicked on.
Yeah, this fitness and propriety standard applies to industries across the board. So it's not just applicable to you're not going to find a fitness and propriety standard for companies' ride-hailing apps.
I think the equivalent standard in U.S. regulatory law is necessary for the accommodation of the public. Necessary or convenient to the accommodation of the public is like a very common standard in regulatory law, and I think this fit and proper standard is very similar to that.
Everything I'm seeing in the regulatory guidebook seems to deal with financial institutions. Like it's talking about like Prudential Sourcebook for mortgage and home finance firms, Prudential Sourcebook for insurers, and that would make sense. Then since this is the Financial Conduct Authority is the regulator. So I'm actually looking at the guidebook that you linked to, which it seems you didn't actually look at before you started like interrogating me. But
well, this is
whether I
this
did.
is linked. This is linked to by the New York Times as the the fitness and propriety standard.
We all know about how right the New York Times is sometimes.
Oh, fake news.
Yeah, dude.
No, you guys are the ones that are constantly criticizing the New York Times.
Oh, I think the New York Times is trash.
Because you know they do that both sides thing. Remember where they describe an opinion that isn't sufficiently liberal for your tastes, and that gives you guys like heartburn.
So I actually think that the New York Times like factive reporting is actually pretty decent. I think that a lot of stuff that they pass off as factive reporting is not factive, and I think that almost all of their editorial decisions are terrible. But like I think the New York Times is probably one of the better publications at checking and then reporting accurate facts.
I mean, I don't know, dude. You guys hate on the New York Times a lot, so
therefore nothing the New York Times does can be good.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that like sometimes
that is
the New York
exactly
Times
what you're saying.
No, I'm saying sometimes they're wrong. You're saying no, dude. It's the New York Times, and I'm just throwing that right back at you, which is that if it's the New York Times, then
my cousin is a partner in a mega firm in London, so I will send him I'll send him an email, and I'll find out what he thinks about this Uber thing.
So should we actually talk about our topic here? This could be the show.
Okay, so Graham-Cassidy, Graham-Cassidy, what is it? Do we know what it is?
I can talk about what it is. I think.
Does it really exist?
It definitely exists. So, okay, so for everyone that's that just for 1 week decided not to pay attention to healthcare policy, I know you took a week off, and now all of a sudden there's yet another bill that could upend your life. It is the latest proposal by the Republicans, specifically Bill Cassidy, senator from Louisiana, and
Yucko.
Lindsey Graham, senator. And what? Yucko?
Yeah. And keep going. Lindsey Graham.
And Lindsey Graham is senator from South Carolina.
Double Yucko.
And former presidential candidate, I might add, Lindsey Graham. So anyway, they came up with a proposal. What this proposal does is it basically turns over healthcare policy to the states. Is that like more or less correct?
Oh my God.
Jeez.
Rich, are you okay?
Yeah, that is what it does, right?
Did someone
does it not do that?
Did someone spike your Kool-Aid?
No, I think that's what it does. Is that incorrect?
Yeah, it's federalism. It's in a nutshell, Graham-Cassidy is federalism personified.
But isn't there an amendment that as the states can do whatever they want as long as it's not progressive?
No, so the single payer healthcare thing is not part of Graham-Cassidy yet. I believe someone wants to change it to that. Yeah.
Senator Kennedy, the junior senator from Louisiana, offered an amendment to Graham-Cassidy, and he said that he's fine with Graham-Cassidy as long as the added flexibility granted to states doesn't include the flexibility to use federal subsidies to create a single-payer system within the state.
So effectively what it does is it basically it does something called it block grants Medicaid, in its entirety. So currently, with current law, basically the states get, I think it's like it depends on the state, but the state pays 40% of Medicaid spending and the feds pay 60%. That's roughly the ratio in most states. In some states it's less, in some states it's more, but that's roughly what it is. And so Medicaid is health care for poor people, for the disabled, not for senior citizens, but it does actually include nursing home care for senior citizens, I believe. Isn't that right?
I think that's right. But that's just Medicaid proper, right? There's also the Medicaid expansion, which is like 90% paid for by the federal government.
Right, exactly. Until some time period. Eventually that rolls off. But, I guess it doesn't have to. It could stay that way in perpetuity. But what this bill does effectively is it says, listen, the federal government has prescribed a lot of rules for how the Medicaid program should be governed. It's prescribed a lot of rules for how, minimum requirements that health insurance plans have to meet, so on and so forth. And the federal government it effectively just takes away the strings from the money that the federal government provides. And so it allows, in fact, doesn't allow, it requires all 50 states to come up with basically a new healthcare system by 2020. So in the next 3 years, every single state will have to come up with its own health insurance marketplace. Will have to come up with its own plan for how to fully administer Medicaid, really without any rules. And every state will be able to petition the Department of Health and Human Services for waiver from minimum insurance requirements, such as coverage of pre-existing conditions and things like that. So that's, I think, in a nutshell, what the bill does.
There's
right?
a key component that you're missing out.
What's that?
The other key component is that the bill it takes, so it does two key things with moving money around. I mean, I think sort of the policy outcomes that you described are accurate. So so
there's actually, I think, and definitely say what you're about to say, but I was going to say is there's monetary aspects of this bill, which I didn't really discuss, and then there's policy aspects of this bill, which I was talking about. So AJ, I think you were about to talk about
but I don't think you can talk about one without the other, right? I mean, like the block granting,
Go ahead.
the block granting. The way the block granting is so block grant is like the conservative catchphrase for when you just take a pile of money and you give it to the state and you say, state, you figure out how to spend it. I think to a certain degree is like a real misnomer. Medicaid is already like extremely flexible, right? Like individual states do a lot with respect to determining individual eligibility for Medicaid, in particular. With respect to portions that are not fully funded by the federal government. So anyway, the way Graham-Cassidy moves money around is it's a 10-year phase out of the Medicaid expansion. So at the end of 10 years, the largest coverage gains from the 2010 ACA bill are wiped out. That will uninsure about 20 million people. The other thing it does is that over the 10-year phase out, it takes the Medicaid expansion money. And it takes that pile of money and it puts it all in one big pot. And then it redistributes it among the 50 states using an extraordinarily complex formula. But basically, that has the effect of rewarding states that didn't expand Medicaid with more money. And it punishes states that expanded Medicaid by taking their Medicaid expansion money away. So, states, not just big blue states like California, but even red states that expanded Medicaid, like Arizona or Kentucky, those states lose money right away. They have to give all of their money to states that never expanded Medicaid, like say South Carolina. So it's a huge payoff, right? Like it really is just like targeted cruelty at Medicaid expansion states, right? Like those blue states and the red states that didn't toe the party line, they get immediately punished with this targeted cruelty for having expanded Medicaid. And then, at the end of 10 years, the Medicaid expansion just goes away. So, I mean, it's, like you can call that like just a monetary effect, but that's like a core piece of policy, right? Like, should we or should we not have Medicaid expansion is not just moving money around, right? Like, it's not just, it's should we or should we not have Medicaid expansion is basically the question of should we or should we not provide insurance to 20 million people?
Yeah, so I think the other thing to add on top of that is it is a policy question in the sense that it changes who makes what decisions and what states are allowed to do. That's one thing that it does. And I think, I think the money and the policy of it are completely intertwined, right? So it's kind of crazy to me that this bill was sort of just floated really in a couple of weeks, and it looks pretty close to becoming the law of the land. And it probably won't, but I don't know. I wouldn't bet that it won't. And virtually everyone that isn't a Republican, and even many that are, have expressed opposition to this bill. And it's because it's just like so extremely impractical. The idea that we would have 50 different states set up 50 different healthcare systems under 50 different sets of rules, by 2020. So, there were some New York Times articles about just how complicated it is to set up all of the IT and to set up all of the enrollment options and like all of that other stuff. And to think that it could all be done in 2 years. It just seems like they just did not think through anything. It's not even like, to me, this bill is not really a question of like, It is. It is not only a question of whether you like the idea of block granting or you don't, or whether you want to slow down the rate of growth in Medicaid spending, or whether you consider that a cut. It's not any of those things. It's really just about, like, should you make policy this way, you know? Or is it a good idea to, like, basically do all this without consulting anyone? You know what I mean? Can you impact a sixth of the American economy on something you kind of drafted over the weekend? With help from Rick Santorum, but still.
I think Lindsey Graham has basically admitted that he knows basically nothing about healthcare policy. And Bill Cassidy actually does seem to know a little bit about healthcare policy. He was actually very skeptical of the previous repeal and replace bills. He's the one who coined the phrase the Jimmy Kimmel test, which is basically that, you know, like, so that Jimmy Kimmel is a late night talk show host. He had a child born recently who had a very specific sort of congenital heart problem, required several open heart surgeries in infancy. And the point basically was that before 2009, Jimmy Kimmel's son, you know, less than a year old, would have already blown through his lifetime coverage limits and would be uninsurable for the rest of his life. And so one of the key protections under the ACA is that Jimmy Kimmel's son is not just insurable, but it's required that insurance companies have to provide him with insurance, and can impose lifetime limits. And so what Bill Cassidy coined as the Jimmy Kimmel test was, you know, that there would be guaranteed issue and community rating for people with pre-existing conditions, and he wouldn't vote for a bill that would eliminate those. And now, you know, there's this sort of Orwellian language and in Graham-Cassidy that Republicans claim would not eliminate, you know, the pre-existing condition prohibitions that Obamacare had, but in fact does almost certainly eliminate them. So what it says in the bill is it in the essential health benefits portion of the ACA, which is where you get the guaranteed issue and the community rating for pre-existing conditions and things like that. In that part of the bill, it adds another subsection, and that subsection says you can apply for a waiver of any of the essential health benefits, including imposing any conditions, including, like, you know, like a rate hike for not just for getting coverage, but you can also impose rate hikes for continuing coverage. And states that apply for waivers of the essential health benefits package for their state areas just have to explain why they, you know, how they expect to make sure insurance will remain affordable for everyone, you know, universally affordable. It's like this incredibly nebulous standard, right? You can, and it's the Health and Human Services Secretary that would be doing the processing the waiver claims, and you can imagine Tom Price is just going to rubber stamp every one of them, right? So there's this language in there that's like, oh, states have to describe in some detail how they'll keep coverage affordable, but in actual fact, right, they're eliminating the pre-existing conditions coverage, right? Like the bill fairly clearly fails the Jimmy Kimmel test. So I think my point there is that I think that Bill Cassidy actually does have a decent amount of understanding of healthcare law, because he, you know, had been involved in discussing in public the policy specifics of the previous ACA repeal efforts. And so for him to be out there dissembling about Graham-Cassidy, I think is, you know, particularly deceitful. I think Lindsey Graham is sort of Trumpian in his ignorance, but I think Bill Cassidy may actually be doing a bad thing.
I think this bill kind of, it doesn't like really have debate. There's not really a debate on whether block granting is good or bad, or the extent to which you should block grant, right? And it's really not even a discussion, I think, you can't really have an appropriate discussion on what should we do about Medicaid spending. You know, should it continue to be an open entitlement program, or should it be, as this bill does, basically have a fixed amount per person that grows at a certain rate? And by that, it's not a fixed amount per person in the sense that, like, AJ only gets to spend $5,500 on healthcare this year. It's that the state of Texas gets $5,500 per person from the federal government, and they get to decide how they want to spend that $5,500, right?
So the cost for healthcare services is increasing faster than inflation. So one of the things that the AHCA did is that it changed the price escalator, like the annual price inflator, the annual price escalator on federal support for Medicaid funding to the states. It changed the price escalator to just chain CPI, And the problem there is that is a lower escalator. That is a smaller escalator than the actual price inflation experienced in the countries with respect to medical services. And so in nominal terms, the amount of money being provided to states would be increasing each year. But in real terms, right, like relative to the cost of the relevant goods, the funding would decrease. And so what Graham-Cassidy does is the AHCA just changed the price inflator or price escalator. What Graham-Cassidy does is it actually decreases funding in nominal terms, not just in real terms. And so, this is like even more draconian than the House bill that passed in the spring. But also to the point, right? Like you can talk about whether this is a cut or not a cut because like real dollars are going up, but in terms of
you said real dollars are going down. A second ago you said real dollars are going down.
Yeah, sorry, you're right.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry. So you
as I understand it, more money will be spent.
It's weird, right? So the block grants get bigger every year, but the Medicaid expansion funding goes down, right? So you can think of Medicaid as two pots, right? You can think of Medicaid as two pots. There's like good old fashioned like 1960s Medicaid, and then there's Medicaid expansion. So what Graham-Cassidy does is it completely phases out and eliminates the Medicaid expansion. So that is a decrease in nominal dollars in healthcare spending. The block grants actually get bigger every year for a period of time. And the rate of growth is slower than the rate of price inflation in medical services. So in real terms, it's going down. But even with respect to the block grants, Graham-Cassidy's like, oh, well, actually, look at the growth in the block grants for each state over time. And he's got this one pager that he's been circling around the Hill, which is like, no, actually, look, they're like, all of these states, even California, are getting an increase in their federal funding, not a decrease. These aren't healthcare spending cuts, right? And this is like a particularly unsavory bit of dissembling, right? Because it's looking at a very, very specific pot of dollars that is growing slower than the relevant price inflation, and it's completely ignoring all of the other cuts, right? So there's a portion of Graham-Cassidy that is a cut in nominal dollars but not in real dollars, and then there's another portion of Graham-Cassidy that's a cut in nominal and real dollars.
I think I'm still confused as to that last part.
Why?
So as I understand it, again, there's two pieces to Medicaid. There's, let's call it Medicaid, the Old Testament, and then there's Medicaid.
Well, call it like, there's original
there's
Medicaid
Old Testament, and then there's Medicaid New Testament.
So okay,
right?
so the way you can distinguish them is that like traditional Medicaid, like 1960s Medicaid, was designed in particular for like pregnant women and families with children. And Medicaid expansion was designed to address people who may not have families, who may not have children, who may not be pregnant, but who are, within a certain range of the locally adjusted
like
poverty line.
133% of the poverty line, right? Something like that.
Yeah. So Medicaid expansion is for all low-income people, and classic Medicaid is for people with children.
So there's those two. So what you're saying is that if you take the sum total of both programs, this new bill spends less money in, let's say, 2018 or 2019 or something like that than would be spent today. Is that what you're saying?
It spends less money in 2027 than would be spent today. So starting in 2026, 2027, it's a $200 billion cut relative to existing law. I actually don't know how it compares to, say, the actual federal outlays in 2017. I think the nominal level of spending would be higher in 2027 than it is today in 2016, even after you factor in the elimination of Medicaid expansion. So in total outlays, I think it is an increase in nominal dollars, but I'm not 100% sure about that. It's a significant decrease in real dollars, and it's a $200 billion decrease relative to the spending that would occur under existing law.
Yeah, it's a decrease in the. So here, are you saying that it is or it is not a decrease in the rate of growth of spending?
It's a decrease in the rate of growth of spending.
Okay, so there's still more money being spent. It's just being spent at a slower rate, or it's not growing at the same rate as it would have. That's the argument, right?
So one program that insures 20 million people would be completely eliminated, and the program that remains would have a decrease in the rate of the increase in federal spending.
So are you saying that the Medicaid expansion insures 20 million people?
Yes.
I thought that was all the people that were covered by Obamacare, not just Medicaid expansion.
Well, here, let's Google it. Okay, so Medicaid expansion so there are 32 expansion states, right, which means that Medicaid expansion could cover more people if more states expanded. But even so, as of fiscal year 2016, Medicaid expansion covers 15 million people. And so by the time Medicaid expansion is eliminated, they are projecting that elimination would cut 20 to 22 million people off of their Medicaid insurance coverage. So the projected impact at the time that the program is eliminated is that 22 million people will be uninsured. If you eliminated the program today, it's about 15 million people who would be uninsured. But because they're eliminating it in 2027, that number is about 22 million.
Do you think there's any way for us to spend about the same amount or less on healthcare over the long term, or do you think this is just sort of something that has to continue increasing, and there's really no way to get it in check?
So, I mean, first of all, inflation is a fact of life. Even in
sure,
right? So,
at 2%, sure.
So, well, not just at 2%, right? So, so price inflation is the change in prices over time, right? It's a term in economics that describes how prices change over time, right? You can actually have periods of negative inflation. You can have price deflation, right? Okay, so
as you do in technology, as an example.
Right. Okay. So the U.S. If you look overall at consumer purchasing, the level of inflation in the United States is extremely small. We have been below target in inflation for basically the last 10 years, more or less. Basically, the last 8 or 9 years, we've had almost no quarters of above target inflation. So usually the Fed targets about 2% inflation. The average inflation over the last 8 or 9 years is somewhat less than 2%. So there's been very, very low inflation in overall consumer prices. However, in medical spending, there's been tremendous price inflation, right? Medical spending consistently has price inflation that is above the average inflation for all consumer spending, right? So
triple sometimes, right?
Right.
I mean, we're talking, instead of 2, you're getting 5, 6, 7.
So the question is, are there reforms that we can have where we can spend the same amount of money but spend it more efficiently? And the answer is obviously yes, right? So one of the things that the Obama administration did as part of the ACA in 2010, part of the pay for the ACA was that there was a $700 billion cut to Medicare. Medicare is a program that covers elderly people. There was a $700 billion cut to Medicare, and there was almost no change in the actual coverage. So people got basically the same benefits. There was basically the same amount of coverage in terms of people covered, and they managed to do it $700 billion cheaper. And that was part of the pay for. That money was reinvested in Medicaid. So how did they do that? There are a lot of reforms that Republicans have prevented Medicare and Medicaid from adopting. For example, Tom's mentioned on the show previously that the government is a huge purchaser of healthcare services, and they should
negotiate.
Yeah, they should use that power to negotiate better prices. And Republicans have.
I thought Trump was going to do that for us.
Yeah, I mean, the Republicans have introduced amendments to laws that have limited Medicare's ability to negotiate drug prices, for example. So I think that there are obvious things that the government could be doing to decrease the rate of growth in healthcare spending while covering the same number of people. And I'm wholly in support of those reforms, right? I totally support the reforms to Medicare that were part of the ACA. So, I'm not someone who says that we absolutely must be spending more on healthcare than we are. I just think that we should be spending whatever it takes to cover at least as many people as are covered now. I mean, whatever that price may be, we should be paying it. And obviously, if we can decrease that price while providing the same level of coverage, then that is better.
How do you guys feel about taxing junk food or regulating the ingredients that can go into food, or Mike Bloomberg's famous sort of making soda smaller, or any of those things? Because, I've begun to feel, and have felt maybe for the last few years, that the reason we spend so much on healthcare, I think Democrats would blame it on an inefficient healthcare system driven by, profit-seeking insurance companies. I think Republicans would blame it on government intervention in the healthcare market. And I'm beginning to think that, there's probably truth in all of those things, but we just don't, on the whole, our people are not as healthy, we eat like shit. And at what point, and that's because the food that's available is at a low price is just frankly not good for you.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if basically nothing. I mean, that until we change our food, really, all this stuff it's really not actually going to change the amount that we spend. Like, we're going to spend more no matter what, and that these are kind of blunt instrument tools otherwise.
So one of the reforms that progressive states have adopted is things like requiring that menus include calorie counts.
Yeah, totally in favor.
Yeah, I mean, so there's another thing. There's another system of reforms called ACOs. Accountable care organizations. And those are people who basically, those are organizations that help guide patients through the medical process, and it helps them make decisions that are more price effective. Right, like the one of the key goals in the healthcare industry, in price control in the healthcare industry, is to stop people from being admitted to the hospital, particularly the emergency room. But any sort of inpatient services are much more expensive than any outpatient services. And so any time where some sort of outpatient service would be the effective outcome is to be preferred. And so often, there are patients who have illnesses or are in need of care that can be provided, for example, as an outpatient service by a general practitioner. And a lot of these people end up in emergency rooms. And why? Well, a lot of these people are discouraged from seeking help until their problem is an emergency, because they expect that the price of care to be unaffordable. Often people are uninformed about what may or may not be an emergency. Something could seem very serious and actually be nothing at all, or something could seem like it's nothing at all and actually be very serious. I had, just like as a for example, from my personal experience, right? When I was in law school, I had what is called an abdominal migraine, which is basically
what's that?
So
that sounds very not fun.
Exactly like a migraine in almost every way. Right, it's like the same sort of like buildup of pressure in your head, particularly in like sinus areas and stuff like that, and it's treated almost exactly the same way. There's like a nose spray you can take, and within like 10 minutes you're fine. The only thing is that instead of your head hurting, your like stomach hurts. So I was like, I just like woke up one morning and I just like rolled over with like excruciating, debilitating pain. Like I couldn't walk, I couldn't move. And I went to luckily I was in law school. I was at law school at a major university, and I just went to the like care clinic on campus, and they gave me a nose spray and I was fine. Right. But that's like the sort of situation where I had something that was basically nothing. Right. I was perfectly fine. And if I hadn't been in law school in a major university, I would have gone to the emergency room. So that's just like a specific example of ways where patients can be guided away from extraordinarily expensive forms of care when, relatively straightforward outpatient care would be totally adequate.
Yeah, those are all good ideas too. I mean, I think I kind of wanted to have that discussion and talk about it a little bit, of course, for the benefit of our listeners, but certainly for my benefit, because it's certainly always portrayed in the media as this decision between spending more money and spending less money, and you don't hear a lot of specific at least I don't hear a lot of specific policy ideas on things that could be done to improve the quality of care and actually like improve people's health. And assuming if you improve people's health, you'd have to spend less on treating them.
So I think that is a valid criticism of sort of the state of the discussion on healthcare policy, but I also think to a certain extent that is a problem with how healthcare is covered and is treated in our political process. So we are right now engaged in this like excruciating battle just to preserve the Medicaid expansion, right? So if you want to talk about like ACOs or
no, I agree.
How like HMOs can function as ACOs and things like that, right? Like if you want to talk about that, that's great. But we're in the middle of like trying to figure out if we're still going to have Medicaid or not. Like I sort of think that is a valid criticism, but that's not the left's fault. Right, it's not like the left are these like profligate spenders, and they won't hear any conversations about reforms. Right, like the left is like extremely busy right now, just trying to figure out if we're still going to have Obamacare next year.
As are we all, AJ. As are we all.
One podcast that I recently started that I can highly recommend is called Heavy X Medical. I think that it's just Heavy Medical, but it's spelled Heavy X Medical. It's very good. It is a podcast that is about metal and about health justice.
Like heavy metal as in music?
Yeah. So, I mean, every episode they like talk about some metal music they like, and then they talk about some like issues in health justice. Like, for example, in their first episode, they talked about ACOs.
That's funny.
So do we want to move on to like, I think we've got the policy as covered as.
Yeah. Oh, and let me say one other thing, which I had mentioned to you guys in the Slack, but to me, this is the fact that this bill, which is so bad, and by that, I'm not talking about it's bad because, you know, if you're a liberal, you don't like it. I'm talking about bad in terms of the process, bad in terms of like trying to force 50 states to come up with 50 new healthcare options, bad in terms of Republican senators not really defending the bill, but saying things like, there's only one car leaving the station and you've got to get in the car, or saying things like, we don't need to wait for the CBO to score this bill. We know what this is. It's fine. The fact that so little thought is going into this is a sign of like extreme political dysfunction, right? So like, I think a lot of times like people think of political dysfunction as the inability of the government to get basic things done. To me, another less appreciated sign of like extreme political dysfunction is the ability of things that are bad laws to almost become law or to like actually become law without much debate, without much consideration, and really in the face of opposition from virtually everyone, right? Because remember, the insurance associations are against this. The hospitals are against this. So every business is against this that's related to healthcare anyway. That many of the states are against this. Obviously, it's not news that the Democrats would be against this, but you have all of the public interest groups are against this. The AARP, you just name it. The group is against it. I mean, I think the opposition in terms of just the substance of the opposition has been more universal on this healthcare bill than any healthcare bill the Republicans have proposed this year. And the fact that it might still become law is a sign of real dysfunction. Like bills like this should be killed, And when stupid bills get close to becoming law through stupid processes, that's a sign that we're doing something wrong.
I agree with that.
And this isn't a political statement, right, that I'm making here, because I'm not actually like saying, oh, block granting is a bad idea, or we shouldn't lower the rate of growth in Medicaid spending or anything. Those are not the reasons why I think this is a bad bill.
I mean, I also think it's a bad bill because of like all of the people who wouldn't be covered by it and how much, how terrible it is and whatever. But I mean, I agree with you, right? Like this is definitely like a really troubling sign for us that these terrible bills keep getting, 45, 48, 49 votes in the Senate. That's a huge problem. I actually think
so we can say that that Obamacare has been repealed, right? Like just basically for that reason, not because anybody's actually like excited about this policy and thinks this will be a good policy.
I actually think that this bill is going to end up getting fewer votes than skinny repeal.
I hope you're right. I feel like they're going to somehow buy, so for our listeners, the current state of affairs, we're recording on a Saturday, but Saturday, what is today? The 23rd, September 23rd. The current state of affairs is McCain is a no, Rand Paul is a no, Susan Collins has hinted strongly that she's a no. And so those three, the bill is dead. But Lisa Murkowski has hinted that she might be a no as well. But I don't know, man. I still think they're going to flip Rand Paul.
I think they could flip Rand Paul, but they may not bother, right? I mean, if flipping Rand Paul only gets them to 48 votes, then they may not do that.
Yeah, I think like they're going to get Murkowski somehow. I think they're going to get Murkowski and then they're going to get Rand Paul. I think Susan Collins will probably vote no, but she's a little unpredictable too. But I think the fact that Murkowski's governor is against it is the governor of Alaska is against it is probably a good thing, or will make it harder for her to support the bill. But I don't know, man. I think she can be bought off, and I think they're probably desperately trying right now. I don't know how much it's going to cost, but I read one estimate that like Alaska, healthcare funding in some parts of Alaska would go down by as much as 60%.
Jeez.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah. I mean, so one thing that Senator Cassidy said, he said that, in his mind, healthcare is healthcare, and it's not clear why it should cost more in Massachusetts than it does in Louisiana, right? And so Massachusetts doesn't deserve more money than Louisiana, let's say, or than, Mississippi or whatever.
Wait, is his question why are wages higher in one place than the other?
No, so he's not admitting that, right? He's not saying that. He doesn't have a question. He has a statement,
like rents
right?
are higher. Does he really does he understand the concept of locally adjusted pricing at all?
Yeah, I think he probably does, but is trying to avoid that argument, right? But I think you could look at Alaska as an extreme example of that, right? Which is Alaska is a lot more rural. It's really cold. They need they have more. Their care is necessarily going to cost more because you have to go to more far-flung places. It's more remote. But under this bill, they're not getting adjustments for that fact, which is obviously not realistic, right? What else were we going to talk about, guys?
Do you think? Well, let's do predictions. Do you think this bill is going to get a vote in the Senate?
Yes. Tom?
I don't think so.
Dude, Tom has said 14 words this entire episode. And I think those words were primarily, Ruchit, have you read the table of contents? A valid question, but I'm just saying maybe Tom should say more words than that.
So Tom says no. Ruch, what do you think? Vote? Is there going to be a vote in the Senate?
Yeah. I think I still think it's going to pass.
You think it's going to pass?
But I still
without McCain, or do you think McCain will flip? I mean, who do you think are the 50 votes?
Well, so they need to get. I think McCain's is going to be a no. I think Collins is going to be a no. I think they're going to get Rand Paul, and I think they're going to get Lisa Murkowski. That gets you to 50.
Really? Lisa Murkowski has not voted yes on a single thing, right? She hasn't voted yes on the motion.
I think they're going to buy her off, dude. I think they're going to buy her off.
So they had a pull her payoff in the spring, and she didn't take it.
Yeah, dude, that's because the payoff wasn't big enough, dude. That's like me. That's like you saying, listen, I've been offered 5 jobs. I'm not taking a new job. Well, if the 6th job pays a lot more than the other 5, maybe you'll take it.
But Lisa,
you know what I mean?
Lisa Murkowski lost the GOP primary in Alaska and then ran for re-election as a write-in candidate and won, right? She seems to be, I've said on the podcast before that I don't believe there are moderate elected Republicans, but Lisa Murkowski is the closest thing you're going to find to that.
So I think that I think she really seems to love and care about her state, and so let's just put a hypothetical that perhaps Mitch McConnell said, listen, Alaska will get 20% more funding than it currently does under current law. I recognize that Alaska has so many more complicated healthcare needs. Oh, by the way, I'm going to give you that, and I'm going to give you a bunch of stuff that you wanted related to federal lands. And she has a wish list. Everybody has a wish list, right? And the fact that she hasn't said no yet suggests to me that she's willing to deal. And maybe Susan Collins is willing to deal too, because she keeps saying she just won't say no. The only 2 people that have come out and said, I'm not voting for this bill are McCain and Rand Paul, and which makes me think that everybody else is up for sale, and it's just a matter of whether you can meet the price. And so I think Susan Collins has a price too. I think if she can find, what will be interesting is if it looks like Susan Collins or if it looks like Murkowski's a yes, right? Does Shelley Moore Capito or Rob Portman, do they start asking Capito, excuse me. Did they start asking for money too? Do they start saying, listen, my vote's been taken for granted. I want more money for opioid treatment, addiction.
Wouldn't that lead to the failure of the bill?
No, because I think they just want to pass something that repeals Obamacare. That's all they care about.
Speaking of Capito and Portman, they were supposedly happy to admit that they had been bought off by $45 billion of opioid crisis funding that was in the previous versions of healthcare reform. That $45 billion is not in Graham-Cassidy.
Why are they such terrible negotiators? They should be asking for that money this time around too.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe... who knows, right? Maybe saying that was the cause of their support for the bill in the previous instance was pretextual. Maybe they don't really care either way, or maybe they've been bought off some other way that is just not disclosed at this time. Who knows? But they were pretty explicit in the past about saying that that opioid crisis funding was what bought them off.
Yeah, I don't know. So Tom, you think this bill's not getting a vote? It's going to fail, obviously.
I don't think so. I think that given John McCain's no vote, I think that provides enough cover for the other two that they can let this bill die.
Are you guys willing to call John McCain the hero that he is now?
I mean, I don't know. Like, am I like a hero
He's a war
because I show
hero.
up at my job 5 days a week?
I mean,
like voting
AJ.
against. I mean, you were saying earlier, right, that the fact that this
I
bill
agree.
got so close to passing is a sign of dysfunction. And so, like, is John McCain a hero just for being like a regular, reasonable person? No, right? Like that is the minimum decency expected of human beings, and it's the 48 Republicans who would vote for it who are the anti-heroes, right? I mean, do you think that the 48 Senate Democrats who have not voted yes on a single measure and have been unified in their opposition, even people who are vulnerable in their reelection campaigns, like Headcamp and Manchin, do you think that like those people are heroes?
dude, I just think you need to abandon your hatred for John McCain. He's saved the country's healthcare system for the second, third, fourth time. God knows
Well, I
what.
understand, right?
Is it
Like-
not enough?
Like,
Is it not enough, AJ?
Is John McCain like a bigger hero than Chuck Schumer or Joe Manchin or whatever? Like, I don't understand why John McCain in particular is so exciting for you. I think you're just ripping me. I actually don't think you're that serious.
Dude, he's going against his party, dude.
But like Collins and Murkowski voted no on every single measure. McCain voted no on one measure, and suddenly he's a hero. Like, I don't understand.
I mean,
It's because I mean, in particular, you take the Collins and Murkowski votes for granted, and that's why they're not heroes, right? That's basically it.
that's
right?
so true. It's so true.
Right? I mean, right? Like John McCain has this like impeccable sense of like drama and self-aggrandizement.
He's
like,
so good.
Like,
He's
he
so
has
good.
positioned himself on as the 51st no vote, even though Collins and Murkowski laid all of the groundwork. Right? I mean, just like most aspects of history, there are like hardworking women following up behind, getting no credit.
I mean, to be fair, Collins and Murkowski are getting credit, but they're both holding out. They're not saying no right now. You know, they kind of did this last time too. You know, now they weren't. John McCain was definitely last to the party, but this time he's early.
I mean, if you're Collins and Murkowski, wouldn't it be convenient for the bill to die without you actually having to publicly be against it?
I know, dude, but being a hero is about like taking a public stand. You know, it's not a, you know, it's politically convenient, but political convenience does not make heroics.
Okay, well, I think there's one other thing we should talk about, which is that the Trump administration has been vocal in announcing its attempts to sabotage the ACA.
Talk about that.
You know, there have been a lot of measures that the Trump administration has taken to not faithfully implement existing law. You know, they've been cutting budgets for navigator organizations. Some navigations had like 90% of their budget cut. Navigators are organizations that help people sign up for insurance on the exchange. Another measure that they've taken is that open enrollment. So there, you know, aside from specific circumstances, there are only certain periods of the year when you can sign up on the exchange. Open enrollment was reduced from 90 days to 45 days.
Why'd they do that?
Because they don't want people to have health insurance.
I mean, I think they just don't want Obamacare to succeed, certainly. I wouldn't say they don't want people to have health insurance. I think that's harsh.
The success, but isn't the success of Obamacare people having health insurance?
There's ways for people to have health insurance without Obamacare. Like, Obamacare is not some necessity for people to have health insurance.
So anyway, the Trump administration has cut the budget for advertising enrollment. They actually, there's the Inspector General at HHSC is investigating whether some of the money that was supposed to be used to publicize open enrollment was actually used by Tom Price to shoot commercials for how terrible the ACA is.
Tom Price is a real piece of work.
Yeah, there's a series of stabilization payments that have been the subject of some litigation, and you know, there have been questions about whether the Trump administration plans to provide these payments to insurance providers. And Trump basically said, you know, that he's keeping everyone in suspense. Like they might pay that money out, they might not. But insurance companies have been vocal in saying that, you know, the doubt about whether the Trump administration is going to provide these payments will lead to an increase in prices, right? Because they just have risk and uncertainty. And so they need to plan for a universe. They need to price in the expected value of possibly not getting these payments. One of the most recent things HHSC announced is that the healthcare.gov, the federal exchange website, is going to be down for maintenance from midnight to noon on all of the Sundays of open enrollment period but one. Which is like, I mean, it just seems
that's
obvious.
That's
it just seems obvious that they're using that as an opportunity to screw up open enrollment. So I think this is like shameful, right? Like I think people should be embarrassed that this is seen as a legitimate or reasonable political tactic.
Yeah, I mean, this goes back to the rules have to matter more than winning, right? And or maybe even just common decency has to matter a little bit more than winning.
Well, I think it's just a classic case of putting your party over the country, right? Like if this were an administration focused on putting the country first, I think what you would see is an administration go in and say, okay, I don't agree with this law and I'm going to take legislative steps to undo the law. But in the meantime, I'm going to make sure that our country is not harmed by any actions I take in the furtherance of the destruction of this law. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like you can work proactively to make sure that you're efficiently funding and providing health insurance to as many people as the law requires without sabotaging your fellow Americans. In essence, that's what's happening.
Yeah, I agree.
In fact, I think there was a Donald Trump tweet where he basically said that's what he was doing, that he was putting party first.
No, he had some tweets about how he said when it crumbles, we'll see if they want to negotiate with me. And he was saying I'll let Obamacare fail, something like that.
Well, I mean, I think it's just shameful, right? I think similar to what Ruchit was saying about how these terrible bills keep almost passing, right? I think it is shameful that there are people who are taking affirmative efforts not to, make the best of whatever situation the country may find itself in, right? There's that trope about during changes in administrations where, you say like, oh, we have to celebrate the new president. The president's success is our country's success. Mm-hmm. And, I think Trump has done his best effort to make that statement untrue.
Okay, so I found the tweet. So here is President Trump talking about Murkowski and Rand Paul. First, he says, Alaska has had a 200% increase in premiums under Obamacare, the worst in the country. Deductibles high, people angry. Lisa M. comes through. Donald Trump. I know Rand Paul, and I think he may find a way to get there for the good of the party. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for the good of the
party.
Isn't
a tacit admission of what he's doing here, then I don't know what is.
He wants it for the good of the party, man. It's about party loyalty. All that loyalty that Donald Trump has expressed to the Republican Party. Remember all that? Yeah. So what's next, guys? I think this was, I can't believe how many healthcare episodes will we be forced to do? I think at some point we get to start complaining.
How often?
What I mean?
Maybe we should just rename the podcast "Everything We Know About Healthcare."
How often does the country have to mobilize all at once, just to preserve Medicaid?
Dude, okay, that's fine, but I'm talking about me, you, and Tom. Okay, how many episodes are we going to record on this topic? Can't we just like have a good bill, or perhaps fix a bill that's broken, and just kind of sincerely kind of work on a compromise, please? Is that so hard? Doesn't need to be. Doesn't need to be this way. Let me tell you.
Sidebars?
Yeah. Sidebars?
Oh, dude, do you guys have a sidebar?
I have a really good one.
Well, hit your sidebar. I don't have a sidebar.
This is something we do every episode.
Yeah, Ruch.
But this is not something unexpected, right?
Hold on a second. I've got a sidebar too. Don't worry about it.
No, this is like showing up at a test and you were like, "Oh, we were expected to bring our own pencils."
No, come on.
Okay.
They should provide the pencils.
My sidebar is Party World Wrestling. This is a backyard wrestling show that is in Austin, Texas, and it is extremely good. It is it's run by I think a lot of the people who run it are socialists. So at the most recent show, Democratic Socialists of America, the Houston chapter, came up on stage to like raise money for Harvey relief, and all of the plot lines feature these like working class these like working class heroes, and the villains are all sort of anti-environment and they're big companies. Like the heels are sponsored by this like horrible gigantic sports drink conglomerate, and there are also a lot of occult overtones. So everybody there worships a worm that encircles the core of the earth, and blah blah blah. It's excellent. It is basically like if television wrestling were extremely good. But I have a link to one of their videos in the show notes. You should click on this. Let's like all take a moment.
This is long, dude.
Yeah, just watch sort of. Just open that Vimeo, and then go to like the 10-minute mark.
Okay.
Where do they host this?
At Fourth Tap Brewery in Austin. So the beer is cheap and extremely good. Fourth Tap Brewery is a co-op, which is extremely in keeping with the other themes of the show. I love it. I love going. It is super fun.
You been?
Yeah.
Thanks for the invite, AJ.
Yeah, dude. Seriously.
So you are, if you clicked on that video and then cut to about 10 minutes, you're now watching Timmy Quivers, who sent himself in a box from the past to come to the wrestling show. He's one of the like main announcers of the show. He's extremely good. This is extremely good. He's drinking a lot of beer right now.
Nice.
But the show has like, all of these like progressive overtones, when they're like shouting things at the crowd.
This is like an hour long.
So the show is like, the shows are usually like 3 or 4 hours long, and you just like stand around in a brewery drinking beer, watching people wrestle. The show is like extremely progressive. So when Timmy Quivers is doing his announcing, he always says like, welcome ladies and gentlemen and those beyond the binary. They always have like security that you can text if anybody says anything like racist or transphobic or does any sort of like unwanted touching. Then you text security, and they're like very serious about creating a safe space. But then also there's like occult themed party violence. So it's like, I mean, this is like the future millennials want.
So this is 4 hours long. Wow. So Dark War 2. Dang, there's a lot.
Yeah. So they've been doing this in Austin for like 4 or 5 years now. Coming up in December, they're having Winter Wonder Slam with a space theme. They're going to go to space.
Wow. How have I just now heard about this?
We should go to space.
Dude, I'll be right back. You guys keep talking.
Tom, what's your sidebar?
I'll go my sidebar. So my sidebar is this survey done by signs.com where they basically asked about 160 Americans to draw 10 famous logos from memory. And then what they did was they, after they drew it, they showed them the actual logo and they said, okay, on a scale of 1 to 10 or whatever, rate how well you think you did. And then they took that and then they gave it to some industry experts and said, go through all of these logos and rate well how you think these people did. And they show this page that I'm going to link to shows both the images that these individuals drew, and they put it on this nice little chart of less accurate to more accurate. And some of these logos, like, people drawing them are kind of funny. Like they're like nowhere.
What do the X and Y axis of these charts represent?
Less accurate versus more accurate.
No, but like, so the X-axis is labeled less accurate to more accurate, and the Y-axis is labeled less accurate to more accurate.
Yes. Yeah. So
there's one variable plotted on two axes. Is one of them like how accurate the researchers think it is and how accurate the drawing people think it is, or is it just
No, it's just a way of displaying the logos. They obviously couldn't just display it like on one axis all the way, one long horizontal image or one long vertical image, so they just put it in a box.
Okay.
But it's funny, like, they just, they talk about like and then at the very end they have this conclusion section as to the things that they learned from doing this, right? So before we, I guess, even get to there, the logos that they did were Apple, Adidas, Burger King, Domino's, 7-Eleven, Foot Locker, Starbucks, Walmart, Target, and IKEA. And they found overall 16% of the people drew nearly perfect logos. 37% were good but not perfect. And then, of course, as we would expect, the more complex the logo, the less likely people were to remember it fully. And, they kind of compared, the logos which logos were more likely to have been remembered and drawn correctly. Compared who was able to better draw the logos. Men and women performed equally well or equally poorly. They found on average younger people drew more accurate logos than older people.
Because they have much more dexterity in their hands.
Maybe. But the most interesting thing on this page, to me at least, is all the different logos, like how some people remembered these logos. Particularly the not so accurate ones.
This is crazy. I think this is also horrifying. It's horrifying that these things.
Logos are art, my friend. This is today. It's today's art. So much memory.
No, but it's horrifying that these things have these impressions of people's memory, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I mean it's what we're exposed to, right? It's this.
Mm-hmm.
This is how many people name a famous. Other than maybe the Mona Lisa, right? It's not about even painting the Mona Lisa, but how many people would be okay, yeah, I could vaguely tell you what the Mona Lisa looks like, but name a painting other than that, or the David, or you know what I mean? It's just not what people are exposed to.
That's fundamentally different, right? With paintings, they're a lot more complex. Logos are supposed to be simple enough that they're easily identifiable and remembered, right? The purpose of a logo is to identify the product or company that the logo represents, right? And so if they're if your logo is basically David, right? I think that would be an unsuccessful logo.
Yeah, that's true. But I think there's a part about this which is about the ubiquity of branding in society. You know what I mean? Compared to the ubiquity of anything else.
Wait, so this Walmart one is unfair, right? Because a bunch of people drew the smiley face, which has been an advertising mascot for Walmart, right?
Mm-hmm.
Wow, the Walmart logo is really. This is really sad. How many people accurately drew the Walmart logo? That's really sad and upsetting.
Well, and
dude, Walmart has done great things for many people. AJ,
holy cow! Look at the Target one. Everybody drew a Target.
Yeah, Target was.
That's just. That's just
Target
an easy
is
logo.
Yeah, that's easy one to remember, right? And that speaks to the cleverness of Target's logo.
Tom, you're gonna love my sidebar. I don't know if you've seen my sidebar yet, or if you've.
What's your sidebar?
It's the BioLite Fire Pit. It's a product that I backed on Kickstarter.
Oh my gosh,
dude!
I'm
so excited about this. It's basically it's a fire pit that's completely see-through, and takes of course wood and then also charcoal, and comes with a built-in a grate so you can barbecue with it, and it has a iPhone-controlled fan to eliminate the smoke. Anyway, it looks really cool. I encourage everybody to watch this video.
Can I give you my criticisms of this product?
Please.
One, this is a product that fundamentally does not need a Wi-Fi connection or an iPhone app. There is no reason for you to require a iPhone connected to a Fire. Fire is one of the fundamental technologies that humans have had since the dawn of humanity. There is no reason whatsoever to attach an iPhone or a Wi-Fi connected app to Fire. Those two things, it's okay if they're separate, right? Okay, but the other criticism, which is just maybe not a criticism of the product, but the criticism of the advertising, is they claim that this is a smokeless fire, right? I mean, I'm no scientist, but I thought Tom, all fires created smoke. Where does the smoke go?
It blows the smoke away. That's why
away where? Away where?
It makes the smoke dissipate, dude.
Dissipate where?
Into the ether, dude.
I mean,
but I do
just,
love,
you know,
oh, dude, outdoor floating fire, dude.
No, I love me a good fire pit too. You know, it's a little hot in Texas, and probably thanks to global warming, it's probably going to stay that way for a lot of fire activities.
I can't wait to grill up some vegetables on my new fire pit. Unfortunately, it's not coming until May.
Rich,
So,
I have a charcoal grill. It doesn't connect to my phone though.
Well, then what's the point of the grill, dude?
Yeah. In addition to that, this thing can use charcoal and wood, which is
my
pretty
charcoal
cool.
grill was like $100.
This is only $200, and it's portable. It's only 20 pounds. I could take. They have it. There's a bag that you can carry it in, and the bag will. It has a solar panel, and it will charge the fan. So you don't have to. The other thing is the fan. The fan has a battery in it, and you can use that battery to charge your phone. So it's pretty amazing, dude. Pretty amazing. I'll invite you guys to the inaugural.
I just don't understand where the smoke goes. I want to know where the smoke goes. That's all I really want to know.
Dude, what you can do is you can you should write a question on on their Kickstarter. Where does the smoke go? You know,
dude, I'm sure they'll send me, give me some marketing BS like into the ether.
So I think this one I should actually get. I think it's not like the cooler, right? So this coolest cooler that I backed, I think it will hopefully not end up like that.
Can you at least tell the story to our listeners of this cooler?
Dude, this is such a painful experience. Why must you make me recount
can I tell the story?
Yeah, sure. Tell the story.
Okay. So you ordered a cooler. Well, let me talk about the cooler first.
Yes.
So this cooler presumably, keeps stuff cool. I don't know if that's a function or not, honestly. But it has solar power, right?
No,
it had no. It doesn't even have solar power.
I don't think so. I think it has a battery pack.
It has a blender,
machine.
right?
Yeah, it has a smoothie machine, a blender. Yeah.
Why does the cooler need a blender?
And a
I don't
speaker.
understand
It has a
that.
speaker too, dude. It has a Bluetooth speaker.
Speaker. Okay. Yeah. So it has all of these accoutrements, right? And so you ordered it on Kickstarter. How many years ago?
Oh God, it was 4 or 5 years ago now at this point.
Right. And how many years did they how long did they promise it would be delivered?
To this day, they still promise.
No. Originally, when you backed it.
Originally 6 months, of course. 6
months, right? So you back it, and 6 months passes, and they haven't delivered it. Okay, what did they say?
It was so this thing has its own Wikipedia page, right? And that's how much so this was a scam. It's created by a guy named Ryan Grepper, okay? And he claims that every time the cooler was about to ship, he'd say, "Hey, I got 5,000 coolers. They came from the factory from China, but I realized that the battery isn't as good as I want it to be. I'm starting from scratch. You need to have the best battery ever, right?" And he'd just make up excuse after excuse after excuse. Then it would be the wheels aren't as good as I thought they were going to be. This cooler has to have the best wheels. Nothing less. Anyway. He blew through $13 million without actually producing any coolers.
No. He produces coolers and he sells them to the general public. He just hasn't produced the coolers to the Kickstarter backers, right?
Yeah,
or
that's
all
exactly
of the Kickstarter
right. Yeah,
backers.
so he burned all that 13. No, and to the vast majority have not received it. And so then he has the gall, every 6 to 9 months, he says, "Listen, if you'll give me $99 on top of the $200 or $300 you already gave me, I'll guarantee that I can get this thing to you in 6 weeks or 8 weeks or whatever." And then of course he fails to do that too. So this guy's the worst, man. He's the worst. I bet he lives in Portland. He probably lives in some mansion. You know what I mean? I don't know how, he burned through $13 million, basically delivered no coolers.
Look, man, houses are expensive in Portland.
Yeah. I mean, you could get a really nice house. I mean, anyway, and then he had the gall. This was the worst part. He had the gall to send emails to all the backers and be like, "Hey, Amazon is selling my cooler for $350, but it retails for $500, and he's like, for every cooler that I sell, I can ship a cooler to one of you backers. Please encourage your friends that want to buy the cooler to not buy it for $350 on Amazon, but buy it for $500 on my website. So it's like he's telling you should screw over your friends, just like I screwed you over, like just so that I could sell more coolers. And then every few months, he's like every 2 or 3 months, he's got some other set of excuses and a plea. Please promote my cooler. Please tell people to buy it for retail, And of course the reviews are terrible. I mean, it's just a complete like show. He got sued by like the Oregon like Department of Justice or whatever, and he had to settle with them. And I should have filed a complaint myself. It was just oh wow, now they're only $399. So I could just give this man $399 more dollars. I mean, I'm not doing it. There's no way.
I mean, instead of doing that, you should have just gotten a Yeti like I did.
Dude.
Those Yetis are great, man.
And you know what's terrible? So like he has quotes on his website. And this is a quote. I assume Matt Lauer actually said this. If he didn't, I mean, I know Matt Lauer listens to our show. So like, Matt, you should like go check out this website, dude. And you should sue this guy. You should. Because he says that this is what Matt Lauer said. If they gave out the Nobel Prize for coolers, this would win.
Matt Lauer is a real patriot.
Time Magazine. The people have spoken. They want a cooler that will make margaritas and charge their phones while blasting the latest song.
That is a lie. Nobody wants a cooler like that.
I wanted a cooler like that, dude.
No, dude. You don't want a cooler like that. You don't know what you want.
I mean, praise for this product. Like, I mean,
Ruch, just spend just spend the $399 you're going to give to him on buying a Yeti cooler, and then
I don't even need a cooler, like this was like a Kickstarter project, and I was like, okay, it's cool, like it's $200 or whatever it was, Anyway, the unlimited praise that this guy got, and still like has the audacity to like show his face and like write updates on Kickstarter with his latest set of excuses. Anyway, I don't think the BioLite fire pit will end up like this. At least this is my sincere hope.
Ruch, you have a whole thing of popcorn in this photo.
Yeah, I was going to take it, but then like my friend Kimberly was like, it was actually really funny. Like I was like walking away with that popcorn. And so then I hear a voice that's like, Ruchit, seriously? You're just going to take the popcorn, an entire thing of popcorn. And I turned around and it was my friend Kimberly. It was pretty funny. And we ended up not taking it.
So Tom and Ruchit went to the Ballet Austin fundraiser last night, whereas I was at the Thinkery fundraiser last night. They were on 2 floors of the same hotel, so it was a real conflict.
Really, it wasn't a conflict for us. We just walked into both of them.
Yeah, we just kind of we were there to sort of. I think Tom and I just wanted to be supportive of as many nonprofits as we possibly could. And we knew that our presence would be an indicator of our support. So we just went to both. I actually think we should go to more and more. I think we don't go to enough.
I had a really good time.
Us too. It was good stuff.
It was good times.
Our support of the Children's Museum is to a large degree very selfish because we just go there so often. Like it's nice for us to give a lot of money to our Children's Museum because then we can go there. And it's nice for our son.
See, I've never actually ever been to the ballet.
You just like going to the fundraiser?